Sketch, the GOAT of content creation right now.
On a Tuesday?
On a Tuesday.
We're getting his little Sketch action. GOAT live streamer. I kind of want to jump right into him right off the rip. Sketch has quickly become America's heartthrob right now. He is I can't imagine you don't know who he is, but he is a video game streamer. He looks like he's like 16, but apparently he's 25 years old. And he's just a hilarious person on camera. And he's kind of exploded. I don't know how long he's been doing it for, but he is now every other video on my TikTok feed. And sometimes it's him. Sometimes it's just like impersonations of him. Sometimes it's trends or whatever that relate to him. Everything is Sketch right now. So a couple angles I wanted to approach this from is one, he obviously has this like persona when he's on camera that is different than who he is as a person, which we've talked about in depth here. I think there's a few different ways to look at it. Two, I also want to talk about the future of Sketch and where someone like him goes from here, from both like a personal branding standpoint, but I have a more general take on like people like Sketch and where I think he'll end up over the next like couple of years.
So just for one additional piece of context, when you say he's everywhere, I'm talking about Sauce Gardner played a game of Madden with him, NCAA March Madness promotion, like the teams would do like players reenacting Sketch. Like he's kind of reached that.
Is there anyone on social right now at this very moment that's got more juice than Sketch?
No, he's
like quite literally.
He reminds me exactly of I Show Speed.
Yeah.
When we first started the show, whenever that was, a year or two ago, where he's transcended just content to becoming into pop culture. Like if you don't know Sketch, you just don't know what's going on.
Let me ask you, because you're more in tune with that. I Show Speed. What is he doing right now? Is he still a streamer? Like where is he at?
Yeah, so he's still streaming. He's definitely fallen off a cliff though.
Okay.
Like I don't think he's fallen off his peak. I wouldn't say off a cliff.
This leads
completely,
into like a strong take I have about
but he
it.
has fallen off a cliff. And to I guess use that comparison, like Kai Cenat, who reached that maximum exit velocity, he has not. It's impossible to maintain that, but like he's done an incredible job continuing that, getting in the right places. Drewski, another one who like had that meteoric rise and then could have fallen off had they not made the right moves and have just kept up with it. Because you can only stack content, subscribers, etc. You can only have that growth for so long. I think same thing happened with Ninja, right? Ninja got so hot, but like Ninja's move, he traded off the continual rise for the payday. Yeah. And I think if you can get to a certain point, you could probably make the argument that it's just like, just cash in. Like, get the $100 million mixer deal, and added distribution does not matter.
I think this is like a conversation to have at any level of content creation where you start to see success. So with Sketch, the reason I wanted to bring him up was because now you're starting to see him do collabs with, whether it's like Jinxie, whether it's Steve Will, these guys, Barstool, etc. And what I think happens a lot of the time is you see success from something that you're doing because you're really good at it, whatever the case may be. You give a lot of value from it. You're super entertaining. Then everybody wants to get their hands on you and they want to start giving you opportunities. Mm-hmm. And it's good and it's bad. I think for the most part, the problem, especially someone who's he's new to this fame and pretty vulnerable to all these like very shiny opportunities. Now starts that I Show Speed slope of you are starting to take on opportunities that now have the opportunity cost of like doing what you were really good at. So now your time is split between like if he continued to stream for 98% of his time going forward, his popularity would continue to go up. His brand would be really strong if he was consistent over the next year, 2 years, whatever. If you start taking on all these opportunities where you're traveling, like, hey, I got to go over to New York for the next week or so, that's probably a week of you not doing the thing that got you to New York, So I think a lot of these opportunities start to come. The fall off comes because you are no longer doing the thing that got you to the top of the cliff. Now, I do think, of course, there's opportunities that are good for you that will continue to help you rise. but I almost think a lot of them are more native to where the person that you were to begin with. Like these streams of, okay, I'm doing a stream with like Barstool, but in the same way he did with Sauce Gardner. Like that's amazing, right? And good for awareness and good for continuing to like get your brand out there. But now if you're doing all this shit where like, I saw the Snapchat of him with Steve Will, and they're like riding monster trucks in the front of his house. I'm like, dude, like, at the end of the day, Sketch, no one really cares if you do that shit. And I kind of feel like you're wasting your time a lot of the time doing that.
But I think it's having an awareness of what your end goal was, right? Because I actually, instead of using speed, I'll use Drewski. Drewski saw Instagram and IG Live as the perfect tool to put him in the conversations for these opportunities to be a comedian, where he could then capitalize on it on YouTube. Andrew Schultz saw TikTok as that method to get there. So if Sketch's thing is to be a Madden YouTuber, then sure, it makes no sense to do that because, yeah, he'll gain extra eyeballs by doing these things, and maybe some will filter back, but his time is better set doing that. If his end goal was to become a full-time comedian, then maybe it does. So I think having awareness of what you're trying to accomplish.
I think it's just very the lesson I guess I would go towards is it's very easy to get sidetracked by opportunities that don't align with what your end goal is.
Yes.
At the end of the day, all these people, they see you as like a penny stock, right? And they want to put their stock into...
I changed my phone cover, my wallpaper, to the main thing is to keep the main thing, which is a Stephen Covey quote. More notably made famous by Jalen Hurts, I think, after a post-game press conference. But I got wrapped up in this with the NFT craze a couple of years ago, right, where the money was good here, the money's good here, but, like, the instant cash was good, but the long-term effects are I should have been putting my time into other places. So really dialing in on what that main thing is. Now I have opportunities today because of our growth over the last few years that I'm like, we could crush this. This would be so exciting. This would be awesome. We would make a lot of money. But it is not part of the bigger vision, and it distracts from that by focusing on that. So I think as long as he knows what he wants to accomplish, I wouldn't say working with Steve Willdale is good or bad because we don't fully know what.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad thing. Obviously, his awareness, but you're going to start to see these opportunities. Like his inbox must be insane right now, and some of the stuff that he'll have to turn down to like stay focused will be an insane turn down to just about every other.
And then in a year when he doesn't have them, he might feel like, oh, why didn't I do this? I should have taken advantage. I do subscribe to the feeling of while you're hot, stay hot, right? And double down, triple down, quadruple down. So maybe he doesn't have to give up streaming. It's just he went from streaming every day for 4 hours to streaming for 4 hours and traveling to New York and doing
the end. The end is really important.
I add on when you're hot. That's the goal.
That I understand with like work a little bit harder when you're hot, but don't exchange the two of them because I mean we talk about the 90-10 rule where it's like 90% of your focus is going to end up bringing back everything to your business. Like I know, again, at the end of the day, me making like high quality fantasy football videos on YouTube is what's going to keep this place running for my side of the business. Now, obviously, I mean, we've been working at it for years now to expand and have other resources to it. But I do think, again, like when you're early on, you're starting to gain success. Early on, you're seeing a little bit of traction. It's very easy to be taken in by those opportunities. And then with Sketch, I'm curious to see how this plays out because I think he's in a really vulnerable position with coming to a meteoric rise through TikTok in that these types of people, like you can't really find anyone who does not like Sketch, right? Like he is on that path right now. With that also comes pretty much most people don't know it, but almost all of like TikTok right now would love for him to do some really fucked up shit to try to tear him down.
Yeah.
So I'm nervous for him as like a younger kid that like he's in a really vulnerable spot where he makes one slip up and the entire internet is going to change their tune on him. And we see this all the time. Like America and TikTok builds people up in the hopes that they could tear them down, you know? And
I think that's any industry. It might be more toxic on TikTok because the second it happens, they're racing to go do it, but it's everywhere. Twitter, canceling people, even in internal circles. I hear you. I think he's ironically got a little bit of a defense because it did happen to iShow Speed where like he was saying some stuff and it finally turned people, but because it was his character, it was kind of accepted. I also think because of his character, options like Kick and some of these other companies that aren't as brand safe have created a little bit of a safety net for, less corporatized people. And then content monetization, like the platforms, and especially TikTok now with the free speech being what will be their biggest talking point when they go into, legal disputes over whether they should be banned here. Like, if he's not doing anything insane, like that bar has actually come down for people, which I think is, you can argue whether it's positive or not. Yes, people will. They would love to cancel him. Like, my gut instinct when his character was kind of revealed that it was a character was that exactly.
We should talk about that because Sketch's online persona, he came to fame like very quickly, very recently, and you know him from his streaming persona, which is like really nerdy. He wears glasses. He's constantly like looking in and out, and a lot of the things he does, like you would assume he has autism off the rip, like, and no way around it, right? That is how he acts on camera 98%
that's
of the time.
the intent he's acting with.
Right. And that's like, I think that's why you fall in love with him at first. You're like, holy fuck, he's so naturally funny. Yeah. And he's like showing that even with autism, like you could, pull this off. And then he's done a few interviews recently, Barstool, etc., where they sit him down on camera on like a normal podcast like this, and his voice is completely different. He is like a very normal 25-year-old kid, where it's kind of alarming that it goes to that point. And that's where I'm honestly surprised that he's already like kind of pushed through the fact that like
I think there's a little bit of a content genius there, right? When you can deflect things and initial things, there's probably some prowess there. It reminds me of Bobby Altoff, like her bit and her character. It wasn't like sketches, but the first time she was discovered, like people assumed, but it's not until the first piece of content that comes out where it's not that character that you're like, oh, they're a fraud. Yeah. Oh, they're faking it the whole time, which is kind of ironic because in a movie, in a show, there's no issue with being a character. But on social, if you're not your authentic self, there is. So I do think that is a little right? Like
I think it's maybe because as a creator, you're talking to the audience, so they feel like you should be talking with them as a person, whereas like on TV show, you're talking to the person in the TV show with you.
But what about in a play? In a play, when you're talking to the audience,
I mean, you're not really talking to the audience.
Like I've been to Broadway shows where there's no
play is like you're on the stage talking.
Okay, what about when you go to Disney World and the mascot is dressed up and whatever, the character is dressed up, like they're talking to the audience. My point is, maybe this is just a moment in time where these characters are early, and I could see characters becoming a thing.
I can
social.
too. I think the
mascot.
It feels like the line is crossed because of like the autism part of it, where it feels like you feel like he has something wrong with him mentally, and you're like, it's weird that
and he's taking advantage of that. Yeah,
like if you're in a movie and you're playing someone with Down syndrome, understood, like actors do that kind of thing, but like the streaming things still feel like if you got on camera and started acting like you had Down syndrome, I would be like, Jack, you don't do that.
Right. You got to like put a disclaimer because that's the thing. It's kind of left up for debate and it's not clear. When in a movie, he
walks the line.
Yes, he toes the line for sure. I think there's actually a bigger takeaway here for the smaller creator, which is what we obviously always want to speak to. This is not uncommon to have this kind of decision process at every step of your career. And I was just listening to Jesser, who went on Colin and Samir. Jesser's got 20 million YouTube subscribers. And he was talking about how every 10 million subscriber YouTuber, when he was a little smaller, had a team and a warehouse. And he would go see that. And he realized that was the path. He also grew up in this hype house with other 2K creators. And I don't want to say he left them in the dust, but like, he went like that, and they kind of stalled out, although they came from the exact same place. You could argue it's his content, but really what I think it is the reinvestment. Like, Sketch's next 4 things need to be hiring a team to create more content. It's what Kai Cenat did. It's what Drewski did, right? He didn't stop making content. So as he's sitting courtside, involved in the NBA dunk contest, involved in commercials, NBA All-Star Weekend, it's because he builds up a team around him, builds up more verticals, builds up more brands. It's exactly what we've done, right? Yeah. We could have stayed at this level cashed in our checks.
It begs the question, though, at what point have you given yourself the runway to do that? Because like we've talked about the Nelk podcast, right? Full Send, where it's like that content it's so bad, but right now they exist because they're just like, oh, they're Nelk.
Yeah, I guess I'm not even saying expanding to new verticals. Yeah. I'm saying reinvesting, right? Like the first reinvestment I did was into Alex, right? Where I hired someone who was going to bring me more brand deals. Yeah. Where I could have done brand deals on my own and I could have maximized like just what I could do on my own. But then you bring in, right, your first employee. And that's like how you scale a business. So I think for a creator, it doesn't have to be like, let's say you're making $400 a week on YouTube. Well, if that $400 a week could go to another YouTube editor to just make your own content better, it's just the idea of investing back into yourself. A lot of it
also goes, main thing is the main thing, where it's like you have to reinvest along that
exactly.
line.
Yeah.